Not. No one's live yet. Now I'm live.
You're live? I'm still not
Now I
live.
am
You're
live.
always live
Yeah.
before I am, though.
I'm always live before you. Well, it starts like we talked about this. The gerbils start pedaling from the coast, so it
They're
hits me
running.
first,
They're
and that's how
running.
the internet works.
That's how.
You're still not live. We're for sure live.
No.
I don't know. I don't know what
I'm getting
your.
the. It's wait. It's starting to spin now. Is spinning good? Oh
Do
yeah.
you?
Now I'm live.
Oh, what's up, everybody? Welcome
Hey.
to Status Coup. I am Ron Flacone, and with me is 1996 dial-up internet person. um
Yeah. I
Tina,
love you
it
too.
is Thursday. We have a
It is
really fun show
Thursday.
today, and we're going to be talking a lot about Cop City because there are some very disturbing
Major
updates.
updates.
There are some major
Disturbing
updates.
and major.
We're going to be
Yeah.
talking to Stephen Donziger about it, who, of course, is the attorney who won the settlement with Chevron and has really been on the beat with this. So he's going to be able to illuminate some things from a legal standpoint as far as why this information is coming out. We're also going to be talking to a fellow Cop City activist, Hannah Riley. And it looks like we'll be diving there right now. We were
Oh,
going
is
to
Steve with
wait.
us already?
Is Stephen ready, or
Let's make sure that his
should we do a
audio.
quick
Yeah, he's
story
being
first?
moved from the green room, so his
All
audio
right,
should be
cool.
okay. Fingers crossed. It's thinking slowly.
Oh
What
wait, now he's
happened?
out. Okay, all right. So Steven should be
The
joining us
gerbils are
here.
not running fast enough.
Yeah, apparently his gerbils aren't running fast enough. But Steven should be joining us soon. Then Hannah will be joining us. In the meantime, we'll do a couple other quick other stories that we wanted to get to today. Smash
Yeah.
the like button. Good call, calling on the ones and twos. Smash the like button. If you got a super chat, we will get to it after our
Yeah.
guests. So please do leave your super chats, leave your questions. And I think Steven is ready. Steven, how
There's
are you?
Steve.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you.
Are you your internet's good?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for joining us. We've had a couple of major, and I do mean major, news options that have come out in the last 2 days. I want to start at the top, though, with the autopsy report. There's no gun residue on his hands, on their hands, pardon me, they. So to me, that says there's absolutely no way that Torque could have fired a weapon. If they had fired a weapon, there'd be gun residue. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it pretty much obliterates the police narrative that they
Yeah.
put out within 2-3 days of this killing. It was false. They knew it, by the way, for the last 3 months because they had their own autopsy report, an official one that was literally conducted the day after Manuel Turan was killed. And they never released it until yesterday when it was forced out into the open by a public records request. This is obviously a cover up.
Yeah.
And it's very disturbing, and the truth needs to come out. There's no independent investigation. And shockingly, political leaders in Atlanta and the state of Georgia, whether Republican or Democrat, and I'm even talking about the two so called progressive senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, are not saying anything about it. So that we need to keep pushing and keep calling attention to this. I fear this was a police murder,
I
and
think so.
look, we don't know everything, but this it's heading in that direction,
Yeah.
and clearly a cover up taking place.
Yeah, I
Steven,
agree.
why?
Go ahead, Ron. I was going to say I've been giving them all the leeway in the world. The state troopers saying, okay, so this has come out. Maybe there's still a chance of this. Maybe there's a chance of that. But at this point, I think the chances are spent. If Tehran had fired a gun, again, no, that is so telling. No gun residue and 57 shots. But go ahead, Ron.
Stephen, why, from a legal standpoint, is there a reason, like, why did it take this long for this particular autopsy to be revealed? Was it solely because of the information request, or is there more to it? Is it common for it to take this long as far as the amount of time?
Well, when there's police killings, they happen unfortunately very frequently in the United States. You see a variety of different things happening. I mean, I think the common denominators is up to the cops. I mean, and some police departments release video and information very quickly. We saw that in Louisville recently after
Right.
mass shooting in a bank. Within 24 hours, they released the body cam footage. Other departments just bury it and either try to never release it or delay it as long as possible, usually to hide wrongdoing, which is what happened here. I mean, I'll point out we have the autopsy report now. There's really two of them, one by the police, one independent. They both show massive amounts of bullets being, put into Manuel Terran's body. But we still don't know basic facts. We don't know the names of the officers who shot Manuel. There were reports by one of the autopsy reports that there were 6 different guns. So there were probably 6 different police officers. What are their names? Are they still on the force? Have they been suspended? Are they being investigated? We don't know any of that. We don't know where the body cam footage is, where the audio footage is. There were 5 different law enforcement agencies that invaded the forest. One of them, the Atlanta police, released a little bit of footage at the beginning, which called into question the official narrative that Manuel shot them first, which I've never believed. And once they released that, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation basically said, don't release anymore. And they're the ones doing the investigation, yet they were the agency that planned the whole invasion of the forest that resulted in Manuel's death. They have a flagrant conflict of interest. Right now, there's no independent investigation. The so-called investigation that's taking place has disclosed almost nothing. And I'm highly suspicious. I don't trust it. And I'm doubly shocked that none of the political leaders in Atlanta, many of whom, sort of act like they're carrying the mantle of the civil rights movement of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., are basically complicit in what looks to be significant police repression and a possible police execution of a climate activist. And I'll point out that Manuel was the first climate activist in the United States in modern history ever killed by police. This kind of thing happens in lots of other countries, unfortunately, fairly frequently. It's never happened here. He's the first one. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Indeed. In fact, we have a clip of that body cam, if you want to play that, where basically you hear Atlanta police officers say they shot one of their own.
No, that sounded like suppressed gunfire.
Yeah. There was this officer who was injured. 238. What agency is that?
You fucked your own officer up.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up, Steve, and get your thoughts on, there was a Guardian piece that just came out as well, where they got the original police reports from early on that day, which are probably much more accurate than anything any officer would say now because it happened immediately. One of the things that they talk about from several different officers is that they had fired rounds of pepper balls into Tort's tent. So Tort was in the tent. They fired pepper ball rounds. Tort unzipped the tent partially, looked out, saw what was going on, and zipped it back up. So this is what happened right before he was murdered. And this is the first time hearing of this. What do you make of that?
It doesn't change the fundamental story that he was very likely unarmed, defenseless. The one autopsy showed that he was sitting cross-legged. They were sitting cross-legged with hands raised at the time of the shooting. Whether they fire pepper ball sprays first or not, I think is not terribly pertinent to the fact that it looks like he was executed without, for no good reason other than, I think, to terrorize these protesters who were trying to block Cop City, and they were doing it successfully.
No, and I agree. He had his hands up. The family autopsy said his hands were up in the air, and because there were clean bullet wounds, they went straight through them.
That's exactly right. I mean, look.
Plus 57 shots. I mean, when it's 57 shots, I mean that is a brutal execution.
Yeah,
that is not a scuffle.
That's exactly right. Let me say this about the 57. There's a sort of element of psychosadism in that number, isn't there? I mean, they basically killed Tort. And then they decided to keep shooting him, and they killed him again and again and again. And there's something sadistic about that. They're trying to essentially, in an emotional way, kill the very idea of protest of their little police academy by shooting him so many times. And, we see this a lot, by the way, in police shootings in the country. The young man in Akron, Ohio, I forget, just came down this week where the officers who killed him were not charged. He was shot at by police in Akron 96 times. And I think 46 bullets actually hit him. So, you basically have situations where there's a mass action by multiple police officers who just go nuts when they decide to go after somebody, and there's clearly more involved in public safety or any notion of public safety. This is about something, I would say, deeper and more nefarious. Yeah. And I think in the case in Atlanta, I think it really has to do with the frustration police felt over the fact that the protest movement to block this completely misguided police training complex was succeeding. Wow. And they just had to, expurgate their feelings, and they did it by, shooting Manuel Tehran 57 times.
Yeah, another thing that came out in the Guardian article was, and I think this is absolutely horrifying. So one of the officers, one of the Georgia State troopers was shot. It's pretty clear to me, I think, that he was shot by friendly fire. They rendered aid to that officer immediately and did not render aid to Manuel, which I think is really disturbing. That's one other disturbing thing. And then the other thing I found disturbing is you see these officers talking about how they were told that everybody in the forest was a domestic terrorist, that they were armed to the teeth, that they were violent, that they had guns, Molotov cocktails, that they would, this other weird thing, that they would pee or throw feces at them, and that might give the officers an STD. These are things that are actually shown in these documents. So obviously they ginned this whole thing up, making it much more different than what reality was. So now you've got a bunch of officers that are ginned up going into the forest thinking, wow, one of these guys has guns and Molotov cocktails, they might kill me, which just adds another layer to the onion. And I think that makes them, they need to be accountable for that.
I think that's an excellent point. I will say, when you see these human rights atrocities through history, they're usually preceded by efforts to completely demonize the other. Right. And I think we've seen this all over the place, right? Germany, World War II, Rwanda. I mean, this is now happening in the United States, in Atlanta specifically, where for months, Governor Kemp, the Republican governor in Georgia, and his attorney general were labeling these peaceful protesters who were camping out in the forest as domestic terrorists, which is a complete, I mean, there's no basis for that there's no connection, there's no violence that they were committing. So this was all just a campaign of demonization. And I think my guess is the officers, when they were sent into the forest that day, in their heads were thinking, they had emotions similar to what one might feel in Manhattan if you confronted Osama bin Laden the day after September 11th, 2001. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. I think they were so jacked up because they were being manipulated. By the way, I don't absolve them of personal responsibility, but there was this mass manipulation going on to demonize the peaceful protesters as terrorists. And we're seeing this, by the way, in other places in the United States, not just Atlanta, but Atlanta played out with awful consequences.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So in closing, what do you see can be done to start to change this culture? Because this is just one story of many. This is just the newest chapter, and we're seeing again the formula being applied of wait until public outrage dies down a little bit, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, the bogus story that we gave has been completely debunked.
Well, that's a complicated question. What I would say is do what you can where you sit. I think what you guys are doing, the great reporting of Status Coup on this and other issues is great. I think others are doing the same. I think we're not going to get the movement or the coverage out of the corporate media. I mean, by the way, this story, this latest autopsy report is being almost completely ignored by the corporate media.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Which is crazy. So we just got to do what we can do with what we have. And I'm doing what I'm doing. You folks are doing what you're doing, and I keep pushing this. So do many other people. I mean, the protest movement in Atlanta is, I think, historic.
Yeah, it's robust.
I actually believe Cop City is not going to be built as a result of it. It's just it's an historic protest movement that brings together environmental activists, people who are fighting police racism, and people who are trying to protect nature. It's an amazing protest movement. By the way, I'm going down to Atlanta on Sunday to speak on a panel.
Oh, great.
Frontline defenders of the earth and friends of tort, and I'll know a little bit more after I go there. But I think all we can do is what we can do, and we can do a lot. We have the power of numbers. We need to keep fighting.
Excellent. No, I agree. More to come on this. Keep us posted on what happens over the weekend. I believe it's Tort's birthday, and there's a few events planned. But we are definitely going to keep following this story till the very bitter end.
Well, thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Stephen. Safe travels.
Take care.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Steve. And Hannah's here too.
Yeah, I think Hannah is ready for us.
Let's just jump right in while we're on the topic, I think. There's Hannah.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm so glad. Good. I'm so glad you're joining us. I've been following your Twitter for a while now. I started following you when I came down to Atlanta to cover some of this. I wanted to ask you right off the bat. We had a council member, Atlanta council member, and I know you're going to know more about this than I do. Jason, is it Dozier? Am I saying his name correct? Dozier. Okay. This is the first time I've seen a city council person actually speak out about what's happening with Cop City. They've been incredibly silent, or in the case of Andre Dickens, they're just outright supporting it.
Correct.
So he basically had a tweet thread today. This tragic revelation further clouds the original narrative and undercuts the public's trust in the accuracy of the information surrounding the training center. If all of this is truly worth the anguish, the protest, the disruption, and the tragedy, then we ought to, at the very least, be honest and clear with our citizens about what has happened and what is happening.
It's about time.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, it's shocking that it's taken this long to happen, but finally, at least one of them saying something.
Yes, and I will say that Liliana Bakhtiari has also spoken out about this. Okay. There are multiple folks who are sitting on the Atlanta Council right now who have said, they campaigned, frankly, for their seats against Cop City, and now the line has been, we just inherited this mess. What can we do except try and make it work for the people, which obviously Cop City will never work for the people. So if this autopsy from DeKalb County is going to give these folks some cover to do what the people of Atlanta have been asking them to do for over 2 years at this point, right. Great. Welcome to the movement, Jason Dozier. It's never too late. Really.
It's never too late. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe they felt like they needed political cover to open their mouths because there's a lot of money that has gone into Cop City. It's, money going into the police foundation from major corporations. Yes. So there's clearly a connection there.
Oh, yes. It's difficult to be a politician in this town and run afoul of the Atlanta Police Foundation. So, yeah, I do think it provides some cover that they didn't think that they had before.
Hannah, first of all, thank you for using the word y'all. I lived in Nashville for a couple years, and I still use that word all the time because it's great, it's convenient, and it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally. I use it in California. Sometimes I get weird looks, but y'all can deal with it.
Exactly.
I'm going to keep saying it. So it's nice to be in another hearing some y'all, and it's not me saying it. So thanks for that. But I know that you've been tweeting about this a lot, and in particular about some of the environmental consequences. I was wondering if you could kind of, tell all the listeners what that includes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I am not an expert in any of these fields, but I have been listening to experts scream into the void now for over 2 years. Our tree canopy is basically the city's greatest resource right now. Obviously, we are all at risk of increased heat waves, increased flooding. There are very, very obvious things that are going to happen to the city of Atlanta if we get rid of hundreds of acres of tree canopy. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the proposed site of Cop City, and I say proposed because I don't think it will be built, is already a place. It's ringed by carceral facilities. There's a transitional center. a place that houses terminally ill people and pregnant people in the Georgia Department of Corrections. There's a jail for children. It is already a place that is surrounded by folks that have been disenfranchised by the state and the city. There was the Atlanta prison farm was there earlier in this last century. So this is already a piece of land that both has like real utility and I mean, it's a park. It's a beautiful piece of green space and that matters to folks. And it is also a place that is already feeling the brunt of the climate crisis. The people that live along the South River and the South River Forest are going to feel the impacts of all of these things that I just mentioned first. And you don't have to take my word for it. Many smart environmentalists have done research around this. The city itself in 2017 had actually promised to keep this as parkland because at that point in the city's history, they understood how critically important it was as a resource for everyone in Atlanta. So,
well, wouldn't development on it also potentially compromise the waterways? I mean, isn't that another component too? I know we had a guest that spoke on that.
Yeah, the lead getting into they want to put in 12. My understanding is there was already a firing range there, so it's a problem, but they want to add like 12. Yeah, and the lead will get into the water and poison it. I
don't know if you've heard, but lead in water is bad.
It's bad.
I'm not
bad. I've heard that's poisonous.
Yeah, same.
I don't think that's a controversial statement.
No.
I wanted to ask you, Hannah, Arthur Blank Foundation and the Public Land Trust, those are the two keepers, my understanding is, of this, 300 plus acres of land. There's the current land swap deal that happened with Ryan Millsap that has gotten some attention. This is where the Weolani
ports.
Right. Okay. So that's where the People's Force would be, he bulldozed part of that. There was another land swap deal that happened much earlier in 2007 that went completely unreported, under the radar, not discussed. I saw it in some of the court documents, a mention of it. So that's how it came to my attention. And Arthur Blank Foundation their response was like, why weren't we made abreast of this original land swap deal back in 2007 as part of the arrangement we have that you have to run that by us? Do you know about this or anything about this? Or is
I
this
do not.
wild
I would
sidebar information? Okay. Well, let's talk later. I have the court documents on this, and I also know who the LLC belongs to. It's a huge land developer down there in Atlanta. But
Atlanta's a developer town.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. It seems to me that the town is run by the land developers. What they want goes. It's very corrupt. I mean, this is also true in California, a lot of places.
Yep.
But it's obvious to me that the financial component of Cop City is really kind of hanging over everybody. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, this is what the motivating factor is for all of the things that are coming after.
Yep.
The fact that Andre Dickens and several Democrats, the entire city council is Democrats, the fact that they're willing to really stand next to Brian Kemp and call people that have done nothing more than utilize their First Amendment rights domestic terrorists is incredibly disturbing.
It is incredibly disturbing. That's the Atlanta way, right? I know that a lot of major cities are run by developers, and I have lived in Atlanta for 6 years, so I can't speak to this in other places, but what I can say is, the construction of Cop City, the PR surrounding Cop City has everything to do with making Atlanta a place that developers and investors can come park their money. You're going to be safe here. We're not going to have any of these uprisings like what happened in 2020. We're building this gigantic militarized police facility. Don't worry, there won't be any issues. Your capital is safe in Atlanta. That's really how it feels.
It's crazy.
Well, what is the general vibe of the public towards Cop City? And I don't just mean like within like the environmentalist community. I mean, obviously like everybody is against it, but has it reached kind of like the more general public where people are going, this is a bad idea, or has it sort of not like broken that threshold yet?
This is not hyperbolic. I have yet to meet with a single person living in the city of Atlanta who supports the construction of Cop City in the Weolani Forest. Not one.
Yeah.
And I I don't live in a bubble. I've been trying very hard to, for 2 years, to have these conversations.
I believe you. I believe you.
Otherwise,
when I was down there, I couldn't find anybody either. Colin and I were asking everybody we came across. Even the old ladies were like, "No, that's bad."
Yeah, no, I literally not one. I'll let you all know when I meet someone, but it hasn't happened yet.
So you would think at that point that the city council members that are, not saying anything and they disagree with it, but they're choosing not to say something, and the ones that are fully supporting it would have a kind of quote unquote come to Jesus moment where they realize that they might not win re-election if they continue down this path.
Yep.
Why hasn't that switch flipped? I mean, the Andre Dickens press conference yesterday was insane.
Yeah, that was one of the more insulting things I've seen in my life. That's a question for them. I mean, it has been 2 years of sustained protest. These are the same council members who heard from us in the summer of 2021. These are the folks who heard hours and hours and hours of comment against Cop City. I do not have an answer for that because I can't fathom how you could have run on a platform against Cop City, which again, multiple currently seated council members ran against this. And I don't know why they have not been able to find a spine and to listen to what the vast majority of their constituents are saying. It's beyond me at this point, but I'm incredibly grateful that Jason Dozier has reversed that trend.
Yeah, no, that's good. So maybe he opened the door.
Yep.
At this point in time, and obviously there's still a lot to unfold here as time continues, but like at this point in time, as an Atlanta resident, what would you say is the likelihood Cop City's going to come to fruition?
Cop City will never be built.
I love it. I love it.
No, I feel like that's the case.
Projection. This is, I have to say this, but I actually also mean this from the bottom of my heart. I don't think that it will be built. I was listening to what Steven said before I came on. This is historic. This is a historic movement. This is national. This is international. Cop City will never be built.
I also want to ask you, so the 2017 domestic terrorism law that is basically being used right now as a political, bludgeon to just keep these folks quiet. Like, I think that the powers that be in the state of Georgia understand that these folks are not domestic terrorists. The original arrest warrants basically have this paragraph on top that basically said DHS has categorized defend Atlanta Forest as domestic terrorists. They named a bunch of things that had happened other places, which really, it's not clear to me have any relationship whatsoever to any of this because they have yet to make that connection clear, at least. And the other thing is that DHS isn't in the business of doing that. So this is just false information. That never happened.
Yep.
But they went ahead and did that anyway. The GBI seems incredibly problematic to me. It's obvious to me that they're engaging in some serious cover-up. The fact there was no gun residue found on Tort's hands is very telling. If there's no gun residue, there was no gunshot fired from his hands. That's just not a controversial statement. It's not.
Correct. That's correct.
What are your thoughts on all that?
The story from the folks who are in the forest on the day that Tortuguita was executed has remained the same since day one.
Yeah.
Since day one, what I heard and what multiple other folks heard was that this was a case of a friendly fire. Essentially, Tortuguita was sitting in their tent, cross-legged. We know that their hands were raised when they were murdered by a firing squad. Originally I was just looking at the press conference footage that this, various groups of cops put on the day that they killed Tortuguita, and the story has changed from, they were the aggressor and we were just responding. Originally they said, look, this happened out of nowhere, and I could go through all of the various iterations of the cop story, but where we are right now is it's clear that they actually fired first, which we only know because of Tim Pratt's great reporting for The Guardian, actually.
That is a great article. I mentioned it earlier with Steve. Yeah. I'm surprised he was able to get those CPR documents, but fantastic overview.
Same. It is just, I feel 100% certain that Tortuguita was executed. I know that they did not shoot. Look, I'm not an expert on ballistics. I don't ever want to be. That's like the tough purview, and I'm not interested. But from what I understand, it would be pretty unlikely that someone seated in a closed tent. But then, I'm so sorry about my dog.
That's all right. I'm a dog person. I love dogs. We are dog friendly on Status Coup.
Okay, amazing. She's done. The alert has passed. Anyway, the cop story has changed over and over and over. And look, if they had evidence, clear evidence that Tortuguita had fired this gun, it would have been out there day one. They obviously don't have that. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
We are piecing this together based off of things, from open record requests, the fact that this is an official DeKalb County autopsy. I do find myself asking why I'm seeing this for the first time 3 months after Tortuguita was executed. But yeah, it's very clear this is following, every other police execution in the city, in this country. And I'm upset that local media has accepted this hook, line, and sinker. And I wish that there was more coverage of this DeKalb County autopsy.
I agree.
Their
Hannah,
story was so bogus out the gate.
Yeah.
I mean, their story was just so unbelievable on the surface. We knew they were in a tent. And some of the things that police were speculating, it sounded
crazy.
Humanly impossible.
Yes.
For them to do what they were saying. And it's like, well, okay, we don't have definitive proof one way or another. This sounds so ridiculously unlikely. And then you have the footage of somebody pretty much acknowledging that there was friendly fire, that they're like, well, that's open for interpretation. We don't know what they meant by you messed your own officer up.
Who knows what?
Please give me the various interpretations on that.
Right.
What are some other interpretations?
Yeah, there's none. I'm going with there's none. Hannah, we actually interviewed one of the forest defenders that was in the forest that morning when this happened. Colin, can you play that clip real quick so Hannah can hear it and we can get her point of view on it?
I heard the gunshots early on, just a couple minutes after I woke up, and I assumed there had been some people passing through the night before that I didn't really know very well, and it seemed like some people in the chats thought it might have been them, and I just assumed it was these people I didn't know because I didn't want to assume that it was somebody I knew, and I had no knowledge of anybody in the forest even having a weapon, and certainly that no one had discussed with me any intent of violence. The entire point of this protest is that we are just sitting in public space, and sitting in trees, and we are not on the offensive. We are on the defensive. We're defending a forest from being clear cut to build a offensive and frankly offensive military facility that is going to be used for violence against them. And as far as I knew, no one had any arms in the forest at all. And all I knew at the time of my arrest, at the time of my kidnapping, was that I had heard gunshots in the distance. I didn't know that there was an officer shot. I didn't know that my friend had been killed. And the officers had not asked me about any of that situation. They did not tell me that I was involved with that. They were essentially silent throughout my search and kidnapping. Now, they're trying to get the felony charge. They're trying to say that we were in cahoots with Tort and we all planned this shooting of this police officer. That they were trying to get us on an aggravated assault. I did not know anything about that. None of us knew anything about that. And it seems like Tort didn't even have a gun. So this whole thing is completely shady as hell.
So there you go. This is somebody that had been camping out in the forest, never saw any weapons. And this is why I think the Guardian reporting is so key here. You hear, how these guys were ginned up before they went into the forest that morning by, the command SWAT guy saying that they were all armed with weapons. They had Molotov cocktails, guns. other sundry things. There was even one report where they had warned that they might throw feces at you and you might get an STD, which I was like, really? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, but okay.
Really? You don't, when you go camping, you don't want to be surrounded by shit? I thought everybody likes that. If you're camping out somewhere, you're like, let's have feces everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean,
It's
the
the
idea
best.
that a protester is going to throw feces at a cop to give him a sexually transmitted
Yeah, no,
disease
it's
is just
absurd. It's
fucking
beyond absurd.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not making that up. That was one of the things that was said. Again, this is more evidence to me that these individuals were being honest when they were saying this. There's no guns. We didn't have guns. We were
Guns was
peaceful.
not a presence in the forest. That's just a true fact. I had not been aware that there was any weapons in the forest at any point. And, you know, I know that y'all know this, but Tortuguita had gone on the record. There's a really beautiful interview with them in Bitter Southerner.
Yeah.
They had been actually really willing to speak with a lot of media and their dedication to nonviolence. And I mean, also just strategically, like Tortuguita was not an idiot. You do not do this kind of thing unless you want to die.
I agree.
There are so many on the record quotes from Tort talking about why police win the violence game and why we're not trying to play that. This was a person camping on public property, seated inside of a tent, cross-legged. And my understanding of what has happened is the police fired pepper balls into Tort's closed tent.
Yeah.
And then because of the many, many sounds of shots, everyone, and again, knowing that they went into this feeling
End up
exactly like worried about shit throwing, Molotov cocktail throwing terrorists in the forest. And instead they encountered Tortuguita sitting in their tent.
Yeah, it seems pretty obvious to me that there was a connection between the pepper balls, them thinking that Tort had fired a gun when that didn't happen, responding to it and then responding to the other shots you're hearing. And next thing you know, it's just, gun fight outs at the OK Corral kind of stuff.
Yes.
This is insane. So this sounds like a giant cover up. I have given this entire space some like charitable, like maybe this, maybe that thing for the last few weeks, just because it's like, maybe, okay, I don't know. It sounds really fucking crazy to me, but, and now this morning I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is 100% a cover up. This is nuts.
Are in the same boat today,
Yeah.
You try so hard to be like, all right, I don't want to believe this is what happened. I'd like to give the space, for a different narrative. But again, like I said, the reality is if they had proof that Tort had done this, we would have seen it on January.
I agree. Let me ask you this, Hannah. The original GBI report, they said that Tort had a gun and that gun was in the tent. They just had a photo of some gun on some foresty looking area. That photo could have been taken anywhere. Absolutely. When they did that, it seemed clear to me that there was a little bit something fishy about that. Like, is that a planted gun? Is that a photo of it taken? I mean, because it's possible he had a registered firearm and didn't have it with him or anything else. Like,
very possible. I also did find myself wondering just today, I went back and I looked at that same photo. They are saying, right, that Tortuguita was seated in the tent, opened fire with this gun, right, and then had a volley of shots returned. The gun is in perfect condition. There's no bullet marks. And again, look, I'm speculating. I don't know shit about guns. I don't want to, but it seems a little bit strange, right, that someone would have 56 gunshot wounds throughout their body and allegedly had this gun in their hands, and the gun looks completely undisturbed.
Yeah, no, it doesn't add up. The gun residue thing
I don't know.
Really was the final straw for me. I'm like, if they had fired the gun that morning,
we would have known.
We would know. There would be residue on his clothing and his hands. It's just not possible for there not to be residue. It just isn't.
Yep. And it's
I've only fired a gun once in my life, but I'm pretty sure I know for a fact that you don't put your hands up to fire a gun.
Yeah, that too.
Again, I've never fired a gun, but I would imagine I wouldn't do it like this.
Yeah, you don't do it that way. Yeah, you definitely
No,
don't do it that way.
The
What do
kick
you think,
would be,
Hannah?
overwhelming.
What needs to happen next as far as the movement is concerned to stop Cop City?
Well, there's a lot
I
of
know that's a big one, but
it is a big one, and part of what's so incredible about this movement is that it's decentralized and it's autonomous and it's not being led by, a nonprofit or an organizer. It is everyone is doing what they can to the extent of their ability to fight this incredibly unfair project. So, I will say, like, the movement just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the more of these really blatant, the gaslighting from police, folks see this for what it is. So the movement is growing, which is very exciting to me. There is space for direct actions, the kind of folks who've been, living in the forest, living amongst the trees, defending the trees, putting their bodies on the line. That is so important. National sort of showings of solidarity are important. There's folks taking actions against these companies that are involved in the building of Cop City. Yeah. On a local level, I do think that we're headed into a sort of exciting opportunity to re-engage some local elected officials in a way that maybe we haven't had the opportunity to do since 2021. But more than anything, I think what needs to happen is we sustain this, and it will be sustained. This movement isn't going anywhere. Like I said, it's growing. And because it's autonomous, you join and you do what you can, how you can. And there's a ton of ways to plug in. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but
we'll give folks a few. Like, what are some places people can go to learn more, whether they're in Atlanta or not? Like, where are just some resources you want to leave folks with?
So Defend the Forest has a ton of good stuff for y'all. I can also, I was going to say I could drop some links. We have, talking points and ways to engage in your own city versus engaging in Atlanta. If you do live in the city of Atlanta, I would really encourage you, even if you think this is lame at this point, which I might as well, please get in touch with your elected official. Actually, I do think we're at a bit of we're at a tipping point where it feels like we've got some momentum.
They can't continue to ignore their constituents. They can't.
They literally can't. They're going to have to take.
They'll be out of a job. That's where it's at.
Exactly. And I think kind of the bare minimum we're asking for from elected officials is like, look, if you also have some questions about what it means that, Tortuguita did not have gunpowder residue on their hands, if you're asking these questions as well, then this probably means that we need an actual independent investigation that isn't led by the agency that also murdered.
GBI clearly cannot be in charge. In the very least, the FBI should step in and do some sort of investigation. Another interesting point, speaking of, that was clarified to me yesterday, I guess it was yesterday this came out from The Guardian, from those documents, is that the FBI was not present in the forest that morning.
That's
so
correct.
We had speculation as to whether that was the case all of these weeks. And now it's really clear that
I thought they were there, and they weren't. So
they weren't. So, and I thought that was kind of, it's weird because my initial thoughts were like, it's been a long time since we've seen like a massive FBI scale, like crazy Waco kind of thing. And this just doesn't jive. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So hopefully, the GBI is clearly lying. They're covering up stuff. The state troopers are in with that. Obviously, the Atlanta police. No group is monolithic. There's obviously police officers in Atlanta that were like, this isn't making sense to me. We saw that in the body cam.
Yes.
So hopefully more of those guys also step forward and say something.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it has been over 3 months since our comrade was murdered, and we don't have a single name of the 6 officers that we know took part in taking Tortuguita's life. That's bonkers.
It is bonkers, and I think it's more than 6. 57 shots that's an execution. I mean, my God, are you kidding me?
This is such a silly point. It's not so. They weren't shot 57 times. They had 57 gunshot wounds.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
To say, because, there's multiple, that means each bullet had, entry and exit.
Yeah, I got
you. To me,
yeah.
that's like more horrifying than being shot 57 times because it just shows that their body was shredded by bullets.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Exit wounds, entrance wounds. Not all of them would have exited. Some would have. But yeah, no, it's awful. Totally unacceptable. And it's horrifying that it took it took this autopsy coming out the way it did for it to have a single or two, I guess now, city council people speak up. This is nuts.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Well,
He spoke up, but
thank you very much for doing what you do, and thank you for coming on here to give us an update. And we will continue to stay on the beat with this. And where can everybody follow you?
Yes.
ooh, you can follow me on Twitter. Hannah.
You have a great Twitter feed.
HCRILEYY, because someone else. I've tried to talk to the other Hannah C. Riley. Just be like, look, can we?
Can I
Anyway,
have
two
my name
Y's.
back?
Hannah C. Riley with 2 Y's.
That's right. And thank y'all for covering this. My God, you know that we're in a bit of a pickle with a lot of corporate media here locally. So it really.
Yeah, before you go, let me say this because I agree with you. I was really horrified with a lot of the local media in Atlanta when I was down there because they were just kind of being stenographers for whatever press relief was coming out of the police department or city council's office, not questioning the narrative. You know, and one of the kids that was arrested for domestic terrorism, I know for a fact because I watched him the entire night marching, was just marching with a banner.
Yep. Yes. There was
And I'm
also
like, that is not domestic terror. That is protected First Amendment activity. Are you kidding me? Why aren't any of these local journalists questioning this narrative and looking at, in the very least, contact these kids that were arrested and ask them what happened?
And we know the reason why, of course, is because they're owned by Cox, who is a large
big donator to the police foundation, is my understanding. Yeah, it's all about money.
It is. Follow the money.
Follow the money. All right, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate what you're doing down there. Your Twitter feed's awesome. And please keep us posted on anything that happens.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate
Thanks,
you. All right, take care.
All right, major updates.
So Hannah C. Riley on Twitter with 2 Y's, y'all, and defend the forest. Check that out online to find. And of course, we're going to stay on the beat with it here. We've been following this since day one. We've been, I mean, you know, I recall all of our past guests and the police narrative first hit the surface. And I remember being, you know, we just straight up said, and of course I was more like, there's no frickin' way than you were, because that's kind of like par for the course for the two of us. But, you know, we were saying this sounds very bogus. We don't have definitive 100% one way or another. But this sounds incredibly unbelievable. And as more has come to the surface, we now know that it is, without a shadow of a doubt, completely unbelievable and a cover up. And so we're going to stay on this like we do. Let's go to the writer's strike first.
The writer's strike,
is that cool?
No, yes, it's very cool because it's very Hollywood.
It's so Hollywood, yo. There's a writer's strike coming up May 1st, unless they reach a decision. The WGA members have voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike if no deal by May 1st. So, Colin, let's go down to what this is all about. So, first of all, real quick here, folks, the WGA, of course, is the Writers Guild of America, and it goes into TV writing, film writing, stuff like that. And now
also some
newsrooms, and now podcasts and stuff like that as well. The scope has gotten wider as technology has advanced. Let's scroll down to what they're upset about. So here's what's going on, and we'll kind of like explain the ins and outs in some of this. They're going on strike because they want to get better compensation and residuals, increase minimum compensation significantly to address the devaluation of writing in all areas of television, new media, and features, address the abuses of mini rooms. So let me explain a bit like what that basically is for people who might not, you know, be as like savvy around this stuff. So back in the day, when it comes to writers deals and stuff like that, there was a segment referred to as new media. Now, new media referred to streaming. And the streaming stuff, it paid a lot less. They could get away with paying you a lot less. The contracts were way shorter. Sometimes it was next to nothing. And you didn't really get residuals, which means like when it gets played, you get some money. Well, why was it that way? Well, because it was written during a time where most people didn't even know what Netflix was. It was just some random startup that was saying, we're going to put Blockbuster out of business. And people were like, what? Who are you guys?
Right.
I don't know
And
what the hell this
Ron,
is.
can I add something to that? Those that did foresee the future and realized that this would be a problem were kind of shut down by the unions. They didn't want to hear about it yet. Let's be honest.
Yes, and some people did. That's an excellent point. Some people did see that. There were some people like Tina's saying, there were some people who were like, wait a second.
This is the future.
This is the future. we need to have good residuals. We can't but other people were like, no. This streaming thing's nothing. And
I think they knew it wasn't nothing.
Wrong.
Boy, were they wrong. But I also think, like in any group, right? You have in unions, it's not all monolithic. We all like to think of union activism as being full of lefty guys, right? When in reality, at that time, you even had a SAG board member that was a Republican, and outspoken Republican. So, a lot of the neoliberal guys were more pro-producer, more pro-employer, not employee necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think a part of the conversation too has to sort of look at the two tiers that exist within all of these unions, right? You have your top A-listers that are making a lot of money that aren't really affected by minimum contracts because they're never going to work a minimum contract, right? Tom Hanks doesn't worry about what the pay scale is on new media because he's going to negotiate something else, whatever he can get, right? So, and some of those guys care about, the average worker in the union and others don't. I mean, so anyway, just a little bit.
Well, and not everyone is subject to this stuff, but it's like, and then, so the other point, the abuse of writers' rooms, because we don't live in an age of just cable television where a season is this and order is this. Now we live in an age of streamers and all these other different outlets that are out there, which in some ways there's some good things to this. There's more choices for people. There's more shows out there. There's more formats. There's kind of more creative freedom. You're not making something at the behest of commercial breaks and stuff like that. So that's all well and good. The other side of it, though, is the industry rates haven't kept up. So now you're seeing these situations where orders are smaller and smaller. They're hiring less writers to do more work in a shorter period of time. And they're getting away with it. So, that's what's going on here. And that's why this strike is so important, because we are heading in a very, very dangerous path in show business where, honestly, the days of just being, for years and years, you could make a decent living as a writer in Hollywood, and you would write for different TV shows, and you worked hard, but you made a decent living doing it. Those days are kind of drying up now. And if something is not, if there's not a course correction, we're going to enter an age where it's just sort of a thing of the past completely, which would be dangerous. Shows need writers, folks.
And, for example, just to mention the SAG thing again, they had a new media contract that literally basically said, whatever you negotiate's okay with us. I'm like, what do you need a union for? I mean, that's like saying minimum wage. Okay, you're good. You're fine. You don't need a union if that's where you're headed. And, those in the Screen Actors Guilds that were against it were shut down. They were demonized. And I know there was that point where the WGA and SAG were looking to maybe go on strike at the same time. That was shut down. So I think this is a really important contract for labor, period, because what the WGA does here is going to echo out into the other unions, not just the entertainment unions, but anybody that covers any sort of creative entity, including newsrooms, writing, things of this nature. So I think we should keep an eye on it. I hope the WGA does take a firm stance on this. Because internet publications pay far less, for articles too than what you would get back in the day. In the 90s, I could write an article and make $2,000 off of that article. I wouldn't see that paycheck now. No way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's obviously it has reached a pretty big, point here where people are just can't take anymore, because look, there was 98% support for this thing. 98% of the WGA was like, yeah, we're striking. We can't do it anymore. So
this is more of a awakening of labor, the awakening of labor in America, right? We are definitely seeing that across the board. I think this is just one more example. Mm-hmm. Workers are done. They're like, we want to be able to, have a decent living. We're tired of working 3 jobs and not being able to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm. So we'll keep an eye on this, folks. Yeah. But if no deal by May 1st, WGA going on strike. We'll see. There's still time. They might reach a deal. but
They
time's
might.
running out. It's already April 20th. Okay, let's should we go to Florida?
Let's go to Florida.
All right, let's go to Florida. Then
Florida's
let's hit some
always, like,
restrict that
what's happening in
propaganda, and then we'll go to the chat. Jesus, this is gonna be hard. Remember, folks, when they were telling you that the Don't Say Gay bill, it was just about protecting children. It was just about protecting kindergartners, and it's not really trying to make it next to impossible for LGBTQ youth to get any resources whatsoever. It's not anything like that. It's just about protecting children, which you would believe if you didn't actually read the damn thing. And guess what? Turns out
horrifying.
That was complete nonsense, because now it's going up through 12th grade, folks.
Yeah.
Now it's going up through 12th grade. Let's start with the AP News piece here.
Okay.
So Florida expands the Don't Say Gay bill, House okays, and look at this creepy photo. Look at this. Oh wait, do you have the photo on your copy, Colin? Oh my God, look at how creepy that is.
It is creepy.
Look at like all these youth. Oh God. Anyway. So
none of these kids know what's happening. None of them.
Yeah. So the rule change would
They're
ban
just
lessons
props.
on sexual orientation and gender
props.
identity from grades 4 through 12 unless required by existing state standards or as part of a reproductive health instruction that students can choose not to take. That's a time when students are becoming aware of their sexuality. So they're imposing it through 12th grade. This has nothing to do. I mean, all the stuff people were saying, oh, well, they just don't want sex education. No one was teaching sex education to third graders. That wasn't happening.
No, it wasn't happening.
Whenever they're
they
making
just
up a
make shit
bullshit
up,
excuse, whenever they make up bullshit excuses for a rule, you have to ask yourself, well, was something happening? Why that would need to be a rule in the first place?
Right.
Like, and the question you should have asked yourself right away, were they teaching sex ed to kindergartners in Florida? Because I agree that that's not appropriate. They're not ready for that yet.
But they weren't doing that. It wasn't
okay,
happening,
then maybe this law is bullshit. And guess what, folks? Guess what? And here's something else that happened recently in Florida, because there's other anti-trans and anti-gay bills going on in Florida. There was an action that happened, I believe, on the 18th. This video surfaced on the 19th. Let's go to the Pink News article first, and then we'll go to the video.
Okay.
This is disturbing, folks. Here's the headline from Pink News. Florida legislature accused of kidnapping trans kids after defiant protests. We are officially there. So on Wednesday, a TikTok video was shared. We're going to watch that video in just a second. That showed parents separating from their children at the Florida legislature. So there was a protest and an action. The parents and their children were at the House of Representatives in the state capitol to protest against SB 254, which would see medical professionals banned from providing puberty blockers and hormone therapy to trans minors. During the session, a number of protesters, both adults and children, threw underwear on the lawmakers from the gallery with messages that said, "Not your business," and "Leave my genitals alone." Now, everybody was detained, including the youngsters. However, eventually, the parents were let out, and some of the youth were not let out. They were literally being held
separated from their
in the chambers. And keep in mind another thing going on simultaneously, and Tina and I covered this together. There's that bill out there that quite literally makes it legal to kidnap a transgender youth if their parents are trying to help them. If their parents are trying to help them and get them care, it's legal. There's a bill that literally makes it legal to kidnap them, because you can say, like, they're not safe with those parents, which is wow. So let's watch. Shall we watch the video?
Yeah,
this is disturbing. Be warned. This is hard to watch, folks. But this is the video.
The youngest one is like 12, and the youngest one 12. The parents are here. They are withholding them from the parents illegally. So where we are right now is actually the gallery of the House of Representatives in the Florida State Capitol. So if you go in through these doors, it's actually the gallery where we're allowed to be as citizens and constituents. Parents are here. There's one of them. Parents are here. There's another guardian. There you go. I believe the youngest one is like 12. Isn't the youngest one 12?
If you are in a red state, if you are in any state that is implemented.
So that is insane. What? And who are these two guys guarding the door? I have so many questions about this still. It's horrifying though.
Well, I mean, honestly, my thought is it was a test. I mean, it was a test as far as, I mean, this legislation is out there. So they're like, well, we're going to hold these kids just right in the state building. I mean, that's a warning. That's a freaking warning across the bow to anybody. Like, hey, don't mess with us. This is our agenda and we don't care. And it's also a test. Like, hey, we're going to hold your kids here. Let's see what happens. And honestly, very little has happened because you really got to dig hard on the internet to find any of this stuff, folks. And if it wasn't for people there TikToking live, who knows what we may or may not have heard, if anything.
Probably nothing.
And as far as I know, we're one of the few shows even talking about it.
Yeah. So I want to mention that during the Tuesday session, Republican Randy Fine, who is the sponsor of the bill, reportedly said, this is from the article, "There's evil in this world and we face it here today." SB 254.
You are it.
You are it, exactly. Randy, pull out a mirror, seriously. SB 254 would make it illegal to do certain medical treatments on children that have the result of amputating perfectly good body parts. This isn't what's happening. Nobody is amputating any kid's body parts. The rhetoric coming out of these folks is unbelievable.
It's a profound, and you know what? I can't even say, because if you want to learn about what you're talking about, you can. Yeah. If you don't understand what gender affirming care,
nationalists.
No, totally. And if you want to understand what gender affirming care actually involves and what it actually is, you can learn more about it. And you can find out that the amputating, that's not what it is. That's not what's happening.
It's not what's happening at all. No.
I mean, so if you don't understand what it is, you shouldn't be writing frickin' laws about it, first of all.
Right.
You really should. You shouldn't be spouting off about it at all because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know, you heard some freaking nonsense,
Ron,
divisive
do you think
propaganda.
That these guys actually believe that, though? Like, do they believe their own rhetoric? Have they been like,
no.
Or are they just,
don't know.
ginning stuff up for the base?
I think some people in the public do. I think there are people in the general public who honestly believe some of this stuff. They truly believe that a child can go to a counselor's office at 9 a.m. and say, hey, I'm confused about some things. And by 11 a.m., they're a different gender. There are people who actually believe that. It is absurd. It is the fact that we have to give it lip service. It is not what gender affirming care is.
No,
it is not what those resources are for. It is not how it works in any way whatsoever. And if you're so profoundly ignorant on the topic, educate yourself. And you got to go beyond Fox News pundits to learn about this freaking stuff. There's no litter boxes in classrooms because a student identifies as a cat. It's not happening. It's absurd. It is absurd.
You're giving me a flashback to that video.
I mean, and it's just, and it'd be less disturbing if everyone realized how nonsensical it is. But people actually think there is some legitimacy to this stuff, and it's causing just. I mean, and this is just. Let's be honest. Transgender people, they're just the biggest scapegoat right now. They're just the newest. I mean, and by the way, when I say this,
and it happened so quickly and out of left field. I remember when this first started becoming a thing. I guess about a year ago at protests, and I had moments where I was like, nah, this isn't actually going to be a thing now, is it? I mean, we've got everybody on the right, like Nazis, like literal Nazis. We had a Sacramento drag show that was protested by guys doing Sig Heils and swastika shirts on Sunday. So it's not just Ohio where this is happening with the Nazis. This is the thing. You've got GOP state senators, GOP Congress folks. Like, it's everybody's dogpiling on this issue. And
I think it's worse than that, I think, because I think there's also people who fancy themselves on the left who are repeating transphobic nonsense.
The TERFs are 100% enabling this stuff. Absolutely they are, and they should be ashamed of themselves for that. That's my personal opinion. I'm a woman. I'm going to say it. If you're a TERF, stop. Just stop.
I'll let you say that and not me because it's easier for you.
I can, as a person with a uterus that has never had any children, I don't give a shit what you call me. I do care that there's actual Nazis showing up at drag shows. I care about that.
Well, absolutely. And it's so disturbing to me. And this goes beyond TERFs. I mean, just people who, fancy themselves on the left, which, I've never heard of the left not being compassionate for all groups of people, and for not seeing that when a group of people, they're literally trying to exterminate transgender people in Florida. That's what's going on. And that's not an embellishment. They are literally trying to just try to eliminate transgender people from existing. Yeah. It is that brutal. It is that barbaric. And, to sit and be silent about that, or to try to downplay what that is, or to engage in this whataboutism about Ron DeSantis's horrible legislation, because you want to try to sugarcoat it, because he's good at sugarcoating it with his rhetoric. I mean, that is just unacceptable. That is freaking unacceptable. And you know what? I always go back to the old famous adage. First they came for the communists. I did not speak out. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out. That's what's going on here, big time. They're coming for the transgender people. And so if you don't speak out, that's on you.
They're coming for anybody that they consider to be a degenerate. And I talk about this on Right-Wing Insanity. Let me just say this right now. And I think people are finally starting to realize this. The Turner Diaries, which is this, you've heard some of these guys talk about Day of the Rope, whether they were at Charlottesville or some of these other protests. So this comes from a book called The Turner Diaries. It's been around a long time. This is how long this book's been around. Timothy McVeigh was peddling the Turner Diaries down in Waco before he planted his bomb in Oklahoma. But one of the things that happens that everybody in these right-wing extremist groups get excited about is something called Day of the Rope. And Day of the Rope is when they hang everybody that they consider to be a degenerate, right? So who are the degenerates? Well, it's everybody on their target list. It's transgender folks, it's gay folks, it's Jewish folks, it's black folks, it's brown folks. It's anybody that communists. Well, maybe they're going to change their mind on communists because a lot of these guys are sort of becoming Nazbols. I'll table that discussion for another day, though. But point being that this should scare the shit out of everybody, that the Overton window has moved so far to the right that some of these things are being normalized to the point where you're, what you're talking about is happening. Not just the TERFs, you're right. Like other people that want to enable this stuff because they have some bias against trans folks for whatever reason. They're not looking 3 feet ahead of them.
No kidding. And I don't know about you. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this.
Way worse than anything I've seen, even in the 90s. Yeah, no, it's much worse now. Like, I'm genuinely concerned, waiting for a shoe to drop.
I mean, same. And look, when I say like transgender people are the main scapegoat, like I'm not saying that the other ones have gone away. I'm not saying like, oh, everything's fine for all the other groups of people. Of course, I'm not saying that for a minute, just to be clear. But whenever there was like the very, very loud homophobia in the early aughts, so many people really were outspoken against that. And there was really a unified voice of opposition.
Yeah.
We don't have that now for transgender people. No. And it is so concerning to see. It is beyond concerning. I mean, I echo, the woman in that TikTok, basically said, if you have transgender people, if you have transgender children, you need to make a plan to exit Florida or a red state. I mean, I would go further than that. I would say if you have transgender children, you should try to get out of the United States if you can.
Yeah, here's
I
the thing,
mean,
and it's happening everywhere, right? It's not just in Florida, right? We have protection
no,
laws here
definitely
in
not.
California, but just yesterday, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow in Right Wing Insanity, but let me mention this now. A church in Central California was vandalized by the Central Valley Proud Boys. At least that's who they think it is because they put their stickers everywhere. But they broke 24 windows on this church.
I'd say it's probably them then.
It's probably them, right? I'm just saying there's a slim chance it could be somebody else, and they want people to think it's them. But I think it's probably them because members of their chapter have been calling the church and threatening them for weeks now.
What kind of church is it? Is it like Unitarian?
Well, that's
or
what I'm
something?
getting to. That no, it's a Lutheran church, but a good chunk of the not constituency. What do you call churchgoers?
Parish, right?
Parish is good, yeah.
Right?
Are gay folks, right? So, and they've had drag shows at the church, like kid-friendly drag shows, which means it's nothing serious. It's costume and fun and whatever. So they've been targeted. So 24 windows, I think it was 22 or 24 windows were broken, like almost all of them at this church. And these Central Valley Proud Boy stickers were there. So assuming that it is them, because they've been calling and leaving threatening messages for weeks now. But this is just, it's just ratcheting up. The rhetoric, the actions are ratcheting up. What's the next thing that happens, Pipe bombs? Like, where are we going with this? Like, it's a very scary time. And I don't think I'm exaggerating half the time when I try to tell people about this stuff. Like, we should all be concerned. I have never seen it reach this high of a decibel level. I mean, I was around in the 90s. We had Nazis in the 90s. We had the, Nazi lowriders in the valley where I grew up.
Yeah.
It was nothing like as bad as this. Skinheads, whatever, nowhere near as bad as this. There were fewer of them. But now you've got, this whole idea of red pilling has been very effective. They're pulling in folks that normally wouldn't have been that, radicalized. And, like there's this one guy who used to be just sort of a Proud Boy, like, not a horrifying guy, probably not somebody I'd break bread with or share political points of view with, but just, I like Trump kind of a guy, right? And now he's got full-blown Nazi tattoos all over his body.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, 3 years?
Yeah.
This is where, like, what is, so I mean, I'm always like interested in how the psychology of that works. Like, how does this happen? Why are some people so easily drawn into these circles?
Well, I think, and this isn't necessarily, as specific as Proud Boy to neo-Nazi pipeline, or whatever, but just speaking more broadly, people are drawn to, extreme, like basically extreme points of view, usually in desperate times. And
100%.
we're in a desperate
economic
time.
Hunger Games is part of it.
So that's part of it. I mean, it's like
totally agree. Yeah.
We're in a desperate time, and instead of that disparity, bringing more people together, sadly, in many cases, it's doing the opposite, and you're seeing people cling to, extremes like this.
Fascist
fascist ideology. The reason something like QAnon can exist is because we do live in a country where we just have a government that doesn't really serve its people at all, that just kind of sees us as a commodity to be exploited. That's the very opposite of what a country is supposed to be. And whether you like it or not, that's just the truth about what the United States is, at least in this moment. That's absolutely 100% what it is.
I agree.
So,
100%.
People are going to make this absurd political fan fiction, where they pick a plutocrat.
That is 100%. And call him a populist. Yeah, you're not wrong. I agree with everything you're saying right now.
So it's like,
that's definitely part and parcel to the conversation.
And it's sad.
I keep pulling my earplug out because I don't know why.
Nah, Tina, you got to get it together. Come on. What are you doing? The internet reaches you last. Your earplug falls out. Sometimes you're just not on screen. You were a ghost last week. Remember when that happened? There was no picture of Tina. There was just, the
Microsoft, we fixed it. Yeah, there was a Microsoft update and it like completely shut off all the software. It was really,
we could hear her, but we couldn't see her until like
really
midway
weird.
through the show when she showed up. So let's do this Restrict Act thing really quick, and then we'll go to your chat. Please do leave us a super chat. We'll get to everyone. I know we're a little longer than usual today because we had a lot to get through and a lot of breaking news. But I want to do this Restrict. So
Agree.
we've been covering the Restrict Act an awful lot. And you guys know me. These are the issues very, very near and dear to my heart. I have been very vocal about how terrible the Restrict Act is. And unfortunately, some places are downplaying this. And recently, PolitiFact did. So let's pull up that PolitiFact thing, Colin. Yeah. So one of the big things about the Restrict Act is it could criminalize a VPN. Here's what PolitiFact published. The Restrict Act would allow the U.S. government to charge you with a felony and $1 million for having a VPN. They claim that is mostly false. Okay, it is not mostly false.
Okay.
Well, first, maybe, I mean, we don't know if it would be $1 million fine. We don't know that. So first of all, the framing is a bit suspect. You know,
okay, so they went to an extreme place so that they could say mostly false kind of
right, because they might be like, well, there's nothing that says $1 million. Like, okay, you're probably right.
Right,
there.
but the fact that it's a felony, it should not be a felony to use a VPN. I have a VPN.
Exactly. Like the fact that
I'm a felon for using a VPN. How does that make sense?
It doesn't. And so here's why they're wrong. And when they're saying this is mostly false. First of all, the Restrict Act, it applies to payment applications, desktop applications, web applications, mobile applications. It applies to a large variety of things that includes pretty much everything except for a pen and a piece of paper. So yes, it includes VPNs. They could criminalize VPNs. Is it guaranteed they're going to? Well, no, it's not guaranteed. Okay. But has the United States used broad legislation for nefarious purposes in the past? Yes, they have. So I don't know about you.
Let's go back to Cop City. That's exactly what's happening there, right? Charging people using First Amendment rights as domestic terrorists. Yeah. It's because the law they passed is so damn broad, they can do it, and they're politicizing it.
Look at the Patriot Act. So this is not a mostly false statement. This could very easily criminalize a VPN.
I see.
Let's go into the piece a little bit more here to see what exactly they're claiming, because they say, oh, well, it doesn't mention a VPN specifically. Scroll down, Colin, because we know what the bill is, but go. Sorry. Oh, wait. Yeah, there you go. Stop there. Some of the bill's critics claim the Restrict Act becomes law. It will make using a VPN illegal. This is misleading. No, it's not. A VPN provides an blah, blah, blah. Okay. Corporations have used VPNs for blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's their claim. Here's what PolitiFact is saying by saying this is misleading, even though, again, it clearly includes VPNs in what it covers with the broad, definitions of what the Restrict Act covers. The words virtual private network are not mentioned anywhere. That's their big thing. Because it doesn't say a VPN specifically, that's why it's misleading, according to PolitiFact, even though it includes all kinds of hardware, software, and totally includes VPN.
If it's so broadly written, it can be applied to a VPN, and that's really what's at issue here. I think your logic's correct on that.
So they're saying it's mostly false. And now, again, I'll go ahead and just read this directly. So we know that it covers all kinds of stuff. And so here's what it gives the U.S. Security of Commerce the broad power to identify, deter, disrupt, prevent, prohibit, investigate, or otherwise mitigate any risk covered from any transaction by any person or with respect to any property that poses an undue or unacceptable risk. I mean, basically anything. Yeah. So that's why this is like saying, oh, well, the Restrict Act doesn't specifically mention TikTok by name. So even though it's basically came out of demonizing TikTok.
I mean, even the politicians are saying it's about TikTok.
Yeah, so
that's kind of wild.
Shame on you, PolitiFact. You really got this one wrong. You are really off base here. Just because it doesn't that's the same logic as saying, well, the Don't Say Gay bill's not a big deal because the actual words Don't Say Gay aren't in there. Okay, well, did you read the thing? The stuff in there is actually way more freaking concerning even. So same thing here. Well, it doesn't actually say VPN. I'm so contrarian.
Isn't that sort of by design anyway that they do
Exactly. That's by design. So PolitiFact, boy, did you screw this one up. Shame on you. Shame on you. And everybody, please go to stoptherestrictact.org. Sign that petition to stop this horrible, horrible legislation. Again, that's stoptherestrictact.org. And before we go to the chat, I will let you guys know where you can find me on the road. May 12th, I'm going to be in Los Angeles. That's my third show of working on my Edinburgh hour. So don't miss that. It's the last headlining show. June 16th, Madison. June 17th, Minneapolis. June 23rd, Detroit. June 28th, Bloomington, Indiana. June 29th, Chicago. And Edinburgh, I'll be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival August 16th through 27th. And October 21st, I'll be in San Pedro, California, doing a comedy series in my own neighborhood. Tickets and all information at romplacone.com. Shall we go to the chat?
Let's go to the chat.
All right. And by the way, feel free to leave us a super chat, folks. We'll get to you. Big Dumb Animal, thank you for the sticker.
Yay.
Thank you for the super sticker, Big Dumb Animal. We appreciate you very much. You help keep the show on the air. Robin, good to hear from you, and thank you so much for the super chat contribution. We appreciate it very, very much. Yeah, thank you. Tony D, can't wait to see you in Chicago, buddy. This proves that cops are worse than the mob. No kidding, right? And Tony, you also say, thanks for having Hannah Riley on. Yeah, she was great.
She's great.
And she says y'all, which is also great. But no, she was great. It was really cool to talk to her and get a very hyper local perspective, which is essential for this, and something that Status Coup is doing and a lot of people don't. So thank you for supporting what we do. I think I don't know who this person is. I think they're a troll, but Jordan Cheratone. This is the second time we've heard from them. I don't know what their deal is, but. Jordan, what's up, buddy? Thank you to Tina and Colin for covering this fascist police compound on the ground, and Ron for his hair. I'm doing my part.
And I'll also add, speaking of that, Jordan and I will actually be going on the ground again, not for that, but we will be starting Monday. We'll be going to Flint for the 9-year anniversary starting next week. Right. And then we'll be going to Kalamazoo to cover some more poisoning happening there as well that you guys might be familiar with. And then after that, I'll be joining up with Lewis over in East Palestine to do coverage updates on that and some things we've been looking into as well on that end. So a whole toxic tour is coming up starting next week. So
toxic tour.
Keep an eye on that.
Man, all right.
Colin got a new camera, y'all.
Yeah, and he's got and that cat was up there. We got to see Colin's cat. Did you see the cat? Did you miss the cat? I saw the cat.
No, I saw the cat. I saw Godzilla. Is that maybe it's not Godzilla? Some creature looking a little bit like Godzilla.
It's Godzilla.
Yeah, it is Godzilla. Thank you.
Nice, perfect. Tony D, what's up, buddy? You're back. Read the Communist Manifesto and then see the movie A Bug's Life. It's the same message. Can we? There we go. People need to rise up. A bunch of people have been telling me I need to see A Bug's Life. I've never seen it. Have you seen it?
I have, and yeah, I think that's pretty.
That's one of my favorite Pixar movies.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, like I know everyone says like there's like a solidarity lefty message in it, which you don't see that in Hollywood all the time. So it's nice when you do see it. But yeah, I gotta watch it. It's on my list. I have a lot of movies on my list, but what are you gonna do? What's up, Chris? How are you, buddy? Just wanted to show some super chat love for the Status Coup Thursdays with Tina and Ron. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for all your support. And you say, P.S., join in. Yeah, folks, you can become a member. You can go to statuscoup.com/join and know that your membership goes to what Colin just talked about. It goes to sending our reporters like Status Lou and Jordan and Tina on the beat in East Palestine, in Flint, and Kalamazoo, and Atlanta. The list goes on and on. And by the way, we talked a lot about Florida today. Jordan was down in Florida. We met a lot of amazing activists from trips like that have been on the show since. Journalism takes a lot of resources. It's not easy to do firsthand journalism. That's why the corporate media doesn't bother doing it. They'd rather have more money for their shareholders, so they cut corners in journalism. Yeah. Well, here, journalism is what we're all about. That's what happens here. We break stories. So, please know that takes resources. So please, if you can, become a member of Status Coup and know that that's where your membership goes. Yeah, there you go. And Dea, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Dea Co. Oh, Deha. Oh, I should have started reading the comment. Deha. There was
yeah,
Deha.
yes.
Yeah. Deha Co. Thank you. Studios will respond to the WGA strike partly by greenlighting more reality. Oh, of course they are.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right.
Greenlighting more reality shows and importing more foreign shows to their lineup. Abso-freaking-lutely. That's what they always do.
That's definitely an outcome for sure.
Yeah, they're going to try to get stuff that's already in the can, like stuff that's already been made. They're going to do more unscripted, more reality shows.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. And it's very, you know, I mean, I don't want to get super like, you know, showbiz insider baseball centric because, you know, like there's just a lot of other stuff we need to talk about. But, you know, one of the things I've noticed in the past handful of years is that your thing again?
Yes.
We're getting you. And folks, know that your membership will help get Tina new headphones someday. Know that if we get a member right now, Tina can get new headphones. Take the challenge. Will someone become a new member so Tina can get properly fitting earbuds with a cable that reaches from her machine to her head?
Okay.
That's funny. Did someone call and let us know if someone rose to the challenge? The properly corded earbuds for Tina.
I do. I need the Colin Cat phones.
We need. Yeah. What happened to those, by the way?
I don't know.
He doesn't have
I'm
those
gonna
anymore.
I'm gonna find some of those online and get those.
You gotta get some cat
I need the
phones.
big ones
Those
that go
are
over
pretty.
the top of my head. Yeah.
I think those were wireless.
Because I'm always like doing this.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Deha. And yeah, you're right. But yeah, what I would say was, you know, I feel like what I've noticed, especially in the past few years, is all the people who are coming to Hollywood with a dream, quote unquote. It's only rich kids now.
Or they get taken advantage of, or nobody else can afford it. Yeah.
No one else can afford it anymore. And look, obviously Southern California was never cheap, you know, but it used to be for a long time. You know, if you wanted to try to make a go of it in show business and you were okay with having some roommates, you could take your shot, you know, like you could take a shot at a dream.
I mean, the rent in LA is so insane. You couldn't even
well, and the jobs aren't there.
And the jobs aren't there.
The jobs aren't there. And the way the ladder works, it's like you literally have to have parents paying your rent pretty much. Yeah. And it's so sad. I mean, it's just so sad to see. It really is. And it's gonna, I don't know. I mean, I hope that I hope that this strike goes somewhere. I really, really do. I hope that they reach a deal before it has to happen. But you know, I'm hoping for the best there.
I feel you. And you know what? They need to organize reality TV. I know that there's been some sort of effort in the past to do that, but those shows need to be unionized. They need to be brought into the fold so that that's not an obvious out for these studios.
I think a cooler idea would be if they just don't happen. But
yeah, I'm not a fan of I feel you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Some of it's okay, but a lot of it I'm just like, what? What?
I don't know.
I mean, would you consider documentaries reality? I don't consider those the same. I don't.
No,
I
don't. I don't consider those.
I don't know. Okay, right on.
I think that unscripted. You could use the term unscripted for reality or for documentaries, but I would say documentaries are documentaries. Reality TV is. And look, I have some of my guilty pleasures. I like I kind of like some of Gordon Ramsay's stuff. I mean, I haven't followed it in years. But Hell's Kitchen used to be a guilty pleasure for me because I enjoy cooking.
Yeah. Is that considered reality? I kind of like that show. I like
that's reality
shows.
TV.
Okay,
yeah,
so
that's
some of it I like.
Well, especially because that's a competition one.
Right.
Like they're competing. And, you know, I mean, that's kind of, I can get into that a little bit. But yeah, they've just really... They've really milked reality TV for everything they can. So for the reasons Deho mentioned. It's so cheap to make.
And it's not union. Yeah.
So they are just laying into it hardcore.
I mean, honestly, I feel terrible for, I've talked to folks that work in reality and there's often safety issues because they cut corners, because they're non-union and they can. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why the folks that work reality programming should unionize and become part of, whatever guild
I'm with you.
get protection.
I'm with you.
know?
Well, hopefully this WGA one sends a good example. So again, thank you everybody. Thank you, Big Dumb Animal. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Tony D. Thank you, Jordan Cheratone. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Thank you, Tony D. Again. Thank you, Chris Garrett. Thank you, Deha. Thank you all so much, and thank you for your membership, and thank you for helping to keep Status Coup on the air, and for sending Status Coup out on the ground so that we can break stories and then bring them to you in studio. Indeed. And of course, you can check out all of my stuff, my tour dates at romplacone.com. By the way, watch my Pilot Loner on my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/romplacone. And Right Wing Insanity is tomorrow, yeah?
It is tomorrow, and I'm very excited. So because we're doing it live now, tomorrow I am going to do a Q&A call-in on the show because we're going to be doing it live.
We should call it QAnon call-in.
QAnon call-in. Yeah.
You should call it QAnon call-in.
So, Chris, Aggravated Progressive, all of our folks, come to the show tomorrow with your questions ready in hand. We're going to do call-in hour. Ariana, everybody. Yeah, it'll be really fun. So think about what you guys want to talk about. I do have some stories I'm going to also show tomorrow, but mainly the bulk of the show I want to do live call-in.
Nice. Yeah. So a right-wing insanity... I was trying to tie in insanity, right-wing call-in insanity. Man, what? Don't brand it that way. What if you only got right-wing callers?
Insanity?
Right?
You know what? If that happens, I will gladly.
Be interesting.
I would, yeah. Any neo-Nazi that wants to call in that I've, reported on, please call in. I will totally talk to you. I will.
Have fun with that.
Let's do it.
Well, yeah, that's why QAnon calling could be a fun slogan, because then you would get QAnon callers.
Call insanity? Call insanity. Yeah, like it's all one word. QAnon call insanity.
QAnon call insanity.
See, there's a reason I don't work in marketing.
Well, anyway, folks, that is happening tomorrow. And thank you for joining us today. And yeah, this is Status Coup signing out.